The wind does not howl. It screams. You are standing on an open plain 24,000 years ago. The air slices into your lungs like broken glass. The temperature is 9 to 11 degrees colder than today. Not a winter, not a cold snap, a world locked in ice. Before you stretches a horizon of white and iron-gray sky. To the north, walls of ice rise higher than mountains, vast continental glaciers burying what will one day be North America and Northern Europe. They grind forward inch by inch. Forests disappear beneath them, rivers freeze solid, entire landscapes are erased. And yet, you are not alone. In the distance, something moves through the snowstorm. Massive, slow, a woolly mammoth. 9 to 14 feet tall, 6 to 10 tons of muscle and fur, curved tusks sweeping forward like ivory scythes. Its breath rises in thick clouds against the pale sky. Somewhere beyond it, saber-toothed cats prowl. Dire wolves move in coordinated packs. Giant ground sloths stand upright like prehistoric shadows. This is not a world meant for humans. And yet, our ancestors are here. Here is the first great mystery of the Ice Age. How did Homo sapiens not only survive this frozen nightmare, but thrive in it? By this point in time, around 24,000 years ago, Homo sapiens had already existed for roughly 300,000 years. Fossils from Morocco push our origins deep into the African past. For tens of thousands of years, we expanded outward into the Levant, across Eurasia, eventually toward Australia. But something happened during the last glacial maximum, roughly 25,000 to 18,000 years ago. The climate tightened its grip. Global temperatures dropped about 4 degrees Celsius. In certain regions, the cold intensified far beyond that. And while glaciers expanded, another pattern emerged. Neanderthals, our robust cousins who had survived European winters for over 300,000 years, disappeared around 40,000 years ago. Other human species vanished as well. Denisovans fade from the fossil record. Homo floresiensis disappears from islands Southeast Asia. Only one human species endures: us. Now pause with me in this wind-blasted world. Imagine the odds. The Neanderthals were physically powerful. Their bodies were compact, built for cold. Their noses large, warming icy air before it reached their lungs. They had survived glacial cycles long before we entered Europe. So why did they vanish while we endured the most brutal cold phase of the last ice age? The answer is not simple, and that is why this remains a mystery debated to this day. Some scholars point to climate volatility. Around 40,000 years ago, abrupt warming and cooling events destabilized European ecosystems. Neanderthal populations may have already been fragmented, vulnerable to environmental stress. Others argue competition played a decisive role. As Homo sapiens entered Europe roughly 45,000 years ago, we brought something different. Not just tools, but networks. Not just fire, but planning. Evidence from sites across Eurasia suggests something striking. Our ancestors were not merely reacting to their environment, they were anticipating it. Let me bring you back to that frozen plain. You are not wandering alone. You belong to a group, perhaps 20, 30 individuals, children, elders, skilled hunters, tool makers. This matters. Archaeological evidence from Upper Paleolithic sites reveal organized camps, repeated occupation layers, hearths carefully constructed, activity zones arranged with intention. These were not chaotic survival clusters. They were structured communities. And structure is survival. Now imagine night falling. The temperature plummets further. Without protection, exposed skin would freeze within minutes. Frostbite, hypothermia, death. Yet your group is dressed in layered animal hides, sewn, fitted, insulated. We will later examine the eyed needle in detail, But here, in this moment, understand the implication. Tailored clothing changed everything. Tight seams trapped air close to the body, fur oriented inward for insulation, outer layers repelled moisture. This is engineering. And that engineering allowed Homo sapiens to enter ecological zones that should have killed them. But clothing alone cannot explain survival. Let's widen the lens. During the last glacial maximum, not every region was equally frozen. Scientists identify climatic refugia, pockets of relative stability, southern Iberia, parts of the Balkans, regions in sub-Saharan Africa. Genetic studies published in journals such as Nature reveal population bottlenecks and expansions linked to these refuges. The Gravettian culture, which flourished in Europe around 30,000 years ago, appears to have retreated southward during peak glaciation. Only groups in what is now Spain and Portugal show clear genetic continuity through the coldest phase. When the climate warmed again roughly 15,000 years ago, descendants of these Iberian refuges spread north and east, repopulating much of Europe. This suggests foresight, or at least adaptive mobility. Unlike highly specialized megafauna, Homo sapiens were generalists. We consumed varied diets, large game when available, fish, birds, tubers, seeds, whatever the land offered. Flexibility becomes power. Still, one haunting question remains. Was it intelligence alone, or something deeper? Consider this. The human brain did not dramatically increase in size during this period. We already possessed large brains long before the last glacial maximum. What may have shifted was how we used them. Anthropologist Brian Fagan argues planning depth, long-term strategic thinking, distinguished Homo sapiens. We stored food, we scheduled seasonal migrations, we mapped animal movements in memory. And perhaps most importantly, we shared that knowledge. Imagine elders teaching children where reindeer migrate in winter, which valleys funnel herds, which plants remain edible beneath snow. This is not instinct. This is accumulated cultural memory. And cultural memory is faster than genetic evolution. When glaciers advanced, mammoths could not reinvent themselves. Saber-toothed cats could not redesign their hunting strategies overnight. But humans could modify behavior within a single generation. This is the core of the first mystery. It was not brute strength, not superior cold adaptation, not even mere intelligence. It was adaptability, amplified by cooperation. Our ancestors built networks that extended beyond immediate kin, exchange of materials across distances, shared tool designs, symbolic ornaments signaling identity and alliance. In a frozen world, isolation kills, connection saves. And yet, despite all of this, survival was never guaranteed. We know from genetic data that Homo sapiens populations were small during this period, perhaps only a few thousand breeding individuals globally at certain points. One epidemic, one climatic shift, one ecological collapse, and our lineage could have ended. That fragility makes our persistence extraordinary. Stand again on that icy plain. The wind roars, mammoths move like shadows against the snow. The world is hostile, unforgiving. But somewhere, inside a rock shelter glowing with firelight, a group of humans laughs, plans tomorrow's hunt, repairs clothing, teaches a child how to shape bone into a tool. In the harshest climate Earth had seen in hundreds of thousands of years, Homo sapiens did not merely endure. We adapted. And from that adaptation would eventually emerge agriculture, cities, civilizations. But here, right here, on this frozen frontier, our species faced extinction and refused. That is where the story begins.
The wind cuts through your shelter. Snow seeps through the seams. Your fingers are numb. A child is crying. Outside, the temperature is dropping fast. If your clothing fails tonight, you die. That is the second great mystery of the Ice Age. How did early humans engineer protection so advanced that they could survive conditions 9 to 11 degrees colder than today? This was not luck, it was innovation. Let's go back roughly 45,000 years. Homo sapiens begin pushing into northern latitudes, into regions that had never known tropical warmth. At first, protection is simple. Animal hides draped loosely over shoulders, fur cloaks, crude wrappings. Effective? Barely. Loose hides leak heat, wind slices underneath, moisture freezes. In extreme cold, inefficiency equals death. Then, something changes. Around 40,000 years ago, in what is now southern Siberia, archaeologists uncover a small object that may have altered human destiny, the eyed needle. It is tiny, made of bone, carefully shaped, polished smooth, a small perforated eye at one end. Before this invention, humans punched holes in hides using awls, sharp bone points, then threaded sinew through manually. Slow, clumsy. Gaps remained between stitches. The eyed needle combines piercing and threading into a single motion. That small hole in the needle's tip represents a cognitive leap. With it, Ice Age humans could create tight, even seams. They could tailor garments to the human form, sleeves fitted to arms, leg coverings that sealed at the ankle, hoods shaped to shield the face. Layered clothing traps air close to the body, and trapped air is insulation. This is thermodynamics at work, long before physics had a name. Recent archaeological discoveries in Wyoming push this story even further. At sites dating back nearly 13,000 years, researchers found bone needles crafted from the remains of foxes, hares, rabbits, bobcats, mountain lions, lynx, and even the extinct American cheetah. Think about that for a moment. This was not random selection. These animals were chosen carefully. Fox fur, hare fur, cat pelts, each with specific insulating properties. The clothing reconstructed from these finds is astonishingly complex, comparable to traditional Inuit garments known for surviving Arctic cold. Fringed, layered, purpose-built. Now shift your attention to Central Europe. At a site in Austria known as Cameron-Grubgraben, archaeologists uncovered dozens of eyed bone needles dating between 24,000 and 20,000 years ago, right at the heart of the last glacial maximum. Alongside them, reindeer skulls with antlers still attached. Why does that matter? Because reindeer shed antlers in spring. If antlers remain attached, the animals were hunted in winter. And winter pelts are thicker, denser, waterproof. This suggests strategic hunting, not merely for meat, but for materials. Ice Age communities were timing hunts to harvest superior insulation. That level of seasonal planning requires long-term memory, environmental awareness, shared knowledge passed across generations. It is not just survival, it is systems thinking. But clothing alone is not enough. You still need shelter. Imagine a cliff face rising from the frozen plain. A natural depression offers slight protection from wind. Humans modify it. Large animal hides draped over rock overhangs to block piercing gusts. Inside, tent-like structures made of wooden poles and sewn hides form inner chambers. At the center, a hearth, flames reflecting off stone walls, radiant heat multiplying inside enclosed space. This is architecture. Not random fire pits, not scattered debris. Engineered habitats designed to maximize heat retention and light. In open plains during brief summer months, mobility becomes essential. Hunters move with migrating herds stretching from the Atlantic coast of Europe to Siberia. So they construct dome-shaped huts partially dug into earth, frameworks built from mammoth bones, massive curved tusks forming structural arches, sod layered above for insulation. Houses made from mammoths, occupied for months. When archaeologists excavated mammoth bone dwellings in Eastern Europe, they found organized layouts, storage pits, work zones, repeated habitation layers. These were not desperate camps, they were planned communities. Now let's step back and consider something crucial. None of this appears suddenly. The eyed needle does not emerge in isolation. It coincides with other Upper Paleolithic innovations: blade tools, burins for carving bone, detachable spear points. Innovation clusters. When one cognitive breakthrough occurs, others follow. The burin, a type of chisel used to carve grooves into bone and antler, allowed for the creation of lightweight spearheads and harpoons. Detachable components, replaceable tips, interchangeable technology. If a spear tip breaks, you replace the head, not the entire weapon. Efficiency increases, risk decreases. Every improvement reduces mortality. But here's the mystery that still fascinates researchers. Why did these innovations appear among Homo sapiens and not among other human species to the same extent? Neanderthals made tools, they used hides, they hunted large game. But evidence for widespread tailored clothing, complex sewn garments, and mass-produced eyed needles is overwhelmingly associated with Homo sapiens. Was it population density? Larger social networks spreading innovation faster? Was it cognitive flexibility, symbolic thinking enabling abstraction? Or was it simply time and chance? We cannot be certain, but we do know this: tailored clothing fundamentally expanded the habitable range of our species. Without it, humans would have remained confined to temperate zones. The Arctic tundra, the Siberian steppe, the high latitudes of North America, these would have remained inaccessible. Instead, Homo sapiens crossed Beringia during peak glaciation, entering the Americas. They adapted to sub-zero winters. They survived blizzards that could kill exposed mammals within hours. Clothing and shelter did more than preserve life. It expanded possibility. And with expanded possibility came dominance. When glaciers eventually retreated around 12,000 years ago, humans were already everywhere, positioned across continents, connected by networks of exchange and shared knowledge. Other species faced shrinking habitats. Humans faced opportunity. This is the heart of the second mystery. A tool small enough to rest in your palm, the eyed needle, may have tipped the balance of evolutionary survival. It was not claws, not fangs, not thicker fur. It was precision stitching. In a frozen world ruled by mammoths and saber-toothed predators, the species that mastered sewing mastered survival.
The herd is moving. You hear them before you see them. A low thunder rolling across frozen ground, hundreds of hooves striking earth in rhythm, steam rising from massive bodies in the cold dawn light. Wild horses, reindeer, sometimes mammoths. And somewhere, hidden beyond a ridge, a group of humans waits. This is not chaos. It is not a desperate ambush. It is choreography. The third great mystery of the Ice Age is this: how did fragile, physically inferior humans hunt and dominate creatures that outweighed them by tons? Let's stand in eastern France, roughly 20,000 years ago. Archaeological excavations at specific valley sites reveal something extraordinary. Layer upon layer of animal bones, not scattered randomly, not accumulated over centuries of chance kills, but concentrated, organized, repeated. Every fall and spring, migrating herds passed through narrow valleys. Ice Age hunters understood this pattern. They did not chase animals blindly across open tundra. They studied movement, memorized routes, anticipated bottlenecks. Then they built fires. Strategically placed flames and smoke drove herds toward natural corridors, tight spaces where escape became impossible. Once compressed into a confined zone, the animals could be killed at close range. This is systems-level hunting, not brute strength, planning, coordination, and patience. Archaeological evidence shows this strategy persisted for tens of thousands of years, generations teaching the next exactly where to stand, when to light the fires, when to advance. Now imagine the tension in that moment. You are one of those hunters. The ground shakes as animals surge forward. One mistake, one misstep,
and you are trampled, crushed beneath thousands of pounds of muscle and bone. Yet the strategy works. Meat is harvested in abundance, excess dried for storage, bones carved into tools, hides transformed into shelter and clothing. Nothing wasted. But large game hunting was only one part of the equation. Let's talk about mammoths. Woolly mammoths stood between 9 and 14 feet tall, weighing 6 to 10 tons. Their tusks could grow 8 or 9 feet long in males. Their blood contained hemoglobin adapted to extreme cold, almost antifreeze-like in its efficiency. They were built for this world. So how does a human confront such a creature? Not alone. Evidence from mammoth kill sites suggests group tactics, driving animals into marshy ground where heavy bodies struggled to maneuver, targeting juveniles or weakened individuals, using thrusting spears at vulnerable points, and later throwing weapons with increased range and penetration. Upper Paleolithic innovations like the burin allowed artisans to carve antler and bone into sophisticated spearheads and harpoon tips. Detachable and interchangeable components meant broken points could be replaced quickly. But here is the critical point. Weapons alone do not explain success. You could hand a spear to a lone hunter and still expect failure. The difference was coordination. Language, complex structured communication allowed groups to plan hunts in advance, assign roles, signal shifts, adjust in real time. By the Ice Age, Homo sapiens were not merely vocalizing, they were speaking with symbolic depth. We know this not only from anatomical evidence, like the structure of the hyoid bone, but from behavior, ritual objects, personal adornments, long-distance material exchange. Language creates trust beyond immediate kin. It allows alliances, and alliances multiply power. Consider dire wolves, pack hunters, efficient, coordinated. Humans became something more. We formed extended social networks stretching across territories. Evidence of similar tool styles and ornaments across distant regions suggests communication between groups separated by hundreds of miles. Information moved. If one group discovered a more efficient hunting technique, it spread. Now think about that compared to megafauna. Mammoths could not share innovations across continents. Saber-toothed cats could not improve strategy across generations with deliberate refinement. Humans could. And then there is architecture. In Eastern Europe, Ukraine, and Russia, archaeologists uncovered circular dwellings constructed almost entirely from mammoth bones. Massive tusks forming curved frameworks, skulls and long bones stacked in concentric rings. Inside these structures, hearths burned, tools were crafted, food was processed. These were not temporary windbreaks. They were semi-permanent settlements. To build such a structure requires more than hunting skill. It requires surplus. You cannot dedicate time to architecture if you are starving. Which raises a powerful question. Did organized megafauna hunting create stability that allowed social complexity to deepen? Or did growing social complexity enable more efficient hunting? It's a feedback loop. One strengthens the other. And yet, for all their dominance, humans lived alongside predators. Saber-toothed cats, particularly Smilodon in the Americas, possessed long, curved canine teeth designed to deliver precise, lethal bites. Giant ground sloths towered nearly 12 feet tall. Dire wolves hunted in coordinated packs across grasslands. Early humans were sometimes hunters, sometimes prey. Survival demanded constant vigilance. Fire becomes crucial here again, not just for warmth, but for protection. Hearths deter predators. Light extends activity into night hours. Social bonding around fires strengthens group cohesion. Now pause and consider something haunting. For tens of thousands of years, humans and megafauna coexisted.
But around 12,000 to 10,000 years ago, many of these giants vanish. Woolly mammoths, saber-toothed cats, giant ground sloths, dire wolves, gone. Climate change played a role. As glaciers retreated, tundra ecosystems shrank, grasslands transformed, habitats fragmented. But human populations were expanding. Did we hunt them to extinction? Or did we merely accelerate decline already set in motion by warming temperatures? The prevailing scientific consensus suggests a combination: climate stress as primary driver, human hunting as amplifier. Yet the exact balance remains debated, and that debate underscores the magnitude of what humans had become: a species capable of reshaping ecosystems, a species whose coordinated hunting strategies altered planetary biodiversity. In the frozen valleys of Eastern Europe and across the plains of North America, humans learned something unprecedented: how to control the movement of giants, how to bend migration patterns to human design, how to build homes from the bones of creatures that once towered above them. It was not brute strength. It was organization. It was foresight. It was the merging of mind, language, and collective courage. When the ice finally began to withdraw, humans were no longer simply surviving. They were dominant, and the world would never again belong to the mammoths.
Step inside a cave. The air is cold, damp. Your torch flickers. Smoke curls upward and disappears into darkness. The walls are not bare. They move. Horses gallop across stone. Bison charge. Reindeer stand mid-stride, their hides rendered with such detail that modern wildlife biologists can identify the season from the thickness of fur. You are in Lascaux, or Chauvet, southern France, roughly 17,000 to 30,000 years ago. And this is the fourth great mystery of the Ice Age. Why, in the harshest climate humans had ever faced, did they create art of staggering sophistication? Let's be clear about the timing. The Upper Paleolithic period, approximately 40,000 to 10,000 years ago, coincides with peak glacial conditions. Massive ice sheets dominate the northern hemisphere. Megafauna roam across tundra plains. Survival demands constant labor. And yet, deep inside caves, far from daylight, humans paint. Not crude sketches, complex, multi-layered compositions, perspective, motion, shading using charcoal and mineral pigments. Some figures overlap, suggesting long-term revisitation and cultural continuity. This is not idle decoration. It required time, organization, shared meaning. Now imagine the scene. Outside, the temperature drops below freezing. Wind lashes the plains. Inside the cave, a small group gathers. Someone grinds red ochre. Another mixes charcoal with animal fat to create pigment. A torchbearer lifts flame closer to the wall. And the artist begins. What are they thinking? Are they recording hunts? Teaching younger generations? Appeasing spirits believed to govern animal migrations? We do not know. And that uncertainty is the mystery. Archaeological evidence shows these caves were not domestic spaces. Few signs of long-term habitation exist in the deepest chambers. The paintings appear in areas difficult to access, sometimes requiring crawling through narrow passages. This suggests ritual, symbolism, purpose beyond mere storytelling. But art was only one expression of a deeper transformation happening during the Ice Age: cognitive complexity. Anthropologist Brian Fagan emphasizes that Homo sapiens possessed not only intelligence, but the capacity for planning and anticipation, the ability to project forward, to imagine scenarios not yet present. Art is evidence of abstract thinking. It is the mind externalized. But beyond art lies something even more powerful: language. By the time of the last glacial maximum, Homo sapiens almost certainly possessed fully developed, syntactically complex language. The anatomical structures required for speech, vocal tract configuration, hyoid bone morphology, were in place earlier, but the behavioral explosion of symbolic culture suggests linguistic sophistication. Language allows coordination in hunting. It allows planning seasonal migrations. It allows instruction in tool making. But more importantly, it allows shared identity. Consider personal adornments discovered across Upper Paleolithic sites: shell beads transported hundreds of miles from coastlines, carved pendants, decorated tools. These are markers, signals. They tell others who you are, which group you belong to, what alliances you carry. In a world where small bands might encounter strangers across frozen landscapes, identity mattered. Cooperation extended beyond family units. Trade networks appear to have stretched across large regions, flint sourced from distant quarries, ornament styles shared across territories. Information moved. And when information moves, innovation accelerates. Imagine one group developing a more efficient spear tip design. Through exchange networks, that design spreads. Within generations, what began as local invention becomes widespread standard. This is cultural evolution. It moves faster than biological evolution. Neanderthals, too, made tools. They used pigments. They may have even produced symbolic objects. But the scale and density of symbolic artifacts associated with Homo sapiens in the Upper Paleolithic is unparalleled. Something intensified. Some scholars call it the cognitive revolution. Others argue it was gradual accumulation reaching a tipping point. But by the Ice Age, humans were not merely reacting to environment. They were constructing mental worlds. And that mental capacity may have been the ultimate survival tool. Now let's connect this to refugia, the safe zones during peak glaciation. Recent genetic research published in Nature reveals that the Gravettian culture, dominant in Europe around 30,000 years ago, retreated southward during the coldest phase. Populations in Iberia, modern Spain, and Portugal appear to have survived while others disappeared. When the climate warmed roughly 15,000 years ago, these groups expanded northward, repopulating Europe. This suggests something crucial. They did not collapse into isolation. They maintained social structures, maintained knowledge systems, maintained identity across generations. And when opportunity returned, they were ready. Language and art preserved memory through hardship. Think about that. In extreme cold, when food is scarce and survival uncertain, humans invest energy into symbolic expression. Why? Because stories bind communities, because shared belief strengthens cooperation, because meaning sustains morale. If you strip away symbolism, survival becomes purely mechanical, but mechanical survival fractures under stress. Cultural cohesion holds groups together when conditions deteriorate. And perhaps that cohesion is why Homo sapiens endured while other human species vanished. We cannot fully reconstruct Ice Age speech. We cannot decode cave paintings with certainty, but we see patterns. Seasonal accuracy in animal depiction suggests intimate ecological knowledge. The antler's position, the thickness of hide, the curvature of muscle. This is observation translated into image. Education through art. Children learning animal behavior not only from elders' words, but from painted walls. A visual archive in stone. The Ice Age was not merely a struggle against cold, it was a crucible for human imagination. While glaciers advanced and megafauna dominated the land, inside caves humans expanded inward into abstraction, narrative, identity.
And when the ice retreated, that inner expansion became civilization, agriculture, writing, law, cities, all built upon cognitive foundations strengthened in frozen darkness. The mystery is not just how humans survived, it is how they created beauty in a world of ice.
The giants begin to fall. Not all at once, not in a single catastrophic winter, but gradually, almost quietly, across continents. Around 12,000 to 10,000 years ago, as the last great ice sheets loosen their grip on the northern hemisphere, something irreversible happens. Woolly mammoths disappear from most of their range. Saber-toothed cats vanish. Giant ground sloths collapse into extinction. Direwolves fade from the fossil record. And with them, an entire Ice Age ecosystem dissolves. This is the fifth and perhaps most unsettling mystery of the Ice Age. Did humans cause the extinction of the giants, or merely witness their decline? Let's set the stage. The last glacial maximum peaks roughly between 25,000 and 18,000 years ago. Then, the climate begins to warm. Glaciers retreat. Sea levels rise. Tundra grasslands shrink. Forests expand northward. For megafauna, large mammals adapted to cold, open steppe, this is catastrophic. Their food sources diminish. Migration routes shift. Calving grounds disappear. Climate change alone is a powerful driver of extinction. But humans are no longer marginal players. By the end of the Ice Age, Homo sapiens occupy vast territories. Europe, Asia, Australia, North America, possibly South America. Population density increases. Hunting technology improves. Social networks strengthen. We are no longer scattered bands on survival's edge. We are expanding. Archaeological sites across North America, particularly those associated with Clovis culture around 13,000 years ago, contain distinctive fluted spear points found near mammoth bones, bearing cut marks, evidence of systematic butchering. The timing is difficult to ignore. In many regions, megafauna extinction follows shortly after human arrival. In Australia, giant marsupials disappear within a few thousand years of human settlement around 50,000 years ago. In the Americas, mammoths and giant ground sloths vanish within millennia of human expansion. This pattern fuels the overkill hypothesis, the idea that humans hunted large animals to extinction. But the evidence is complex. Many megafauna populations were already stressed by climate shifts. Habitat fragmentation weakens reproduction rates. Shrinking grasslands reduce carrying capacity. Add even modest hunting pressure, and vulnerable populations collapse. Current scientific consensus leans toward a combination model. Climate change as primary destabilizer, human hunting as accelerator. But the precise balance remains debated. And here is where the mystery deepens. Not all megafauna disappear everywhere at once. On Wrangel Island in the Arctic Ocean, a small population of woolly mammoths survives to roughly 4,000 years ago, long after pyramids rise in Egypt. Why there? Isolation. Limited human contact. Genetic evidence suggests small, inbred populations persisting in refuge zones until environmental stress or human presence eventually extinguishes them. Now return to Europe during peak glaciation. Genetic research published in Nature reveals that gravity and hunter-gatherers sought refuge in southern Iberia during the coldest phases. Only those groups appear to show long-term continuity. When temperatures rise roughly 15,000 years ago, these survivors expand northward. They repopulate a continent reshaped by ice. This tells us something critical. Humans were not passive victims of climate. They navigated it. They relocated strategically. They survived in refugia, places where climate shifts were less extreme. Sub-Saharan Africa served as a key refuge. Southern Europe offered pockets of stability,
Parts of Asia remained habitable even during peak cold. Unlike mammoths or saber-toothed cats, humans were ecological generalists. We ate diverse foods: fish, birds, roots, seeds, large game when available. If mammoth herds declined, we adapted. If grasslands vanished, we shifted diets. This flexibility is the core difference. Specialists thrive in stable ecosystems. Generalists endure change. But endurance carries consequences. As humans spread into new territories, ecosystems that had never faced coordinated human hunters suddenly encountered them. Large animals reproduce slowly, long gestation periods, few offspring. Even small increases in mortality rates can push such species toward extinction. Imagine a shrinking mammoth population already pressured by warming climate. Now introduce organized human hunting. Not reckless slaughter. Strategic, seasonal, efficient. The margin between survival and extinction narrows, and eventually disappears. But we must resist oversimplification. Not every extinction aligns perfectly with human arrival. In some regions, climate timing matches extinction more closely than archaeological evidence of hunting. This is why the debate endures. Ice cores, pollen records, ancient DNA, all pieces of a complex puzzle. What we do know is this. By the end of the Ice Age, Homo sapiens stands alone among human species. Neanderthals gone around 40,000 years ago. Denisovans absorbed or vanished. Other archaic populations disappear. Only one lineage survives the last glacial maximum and emerges into the Holocene. Ours. And here lies the final twist. We're technically still living in an ice age. Geologically speaking, Earth remains within a long-term glacial cycle. We are currently in a warm interglacial period, the Holocene, marked by relatively stable climate over the last 11,700 years.